Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's virtual public meeting regarding one of the major components of the Anderson Dam seismic retrofit project. I'm Melanie Richardson, Valley Water's Assistant Chief Executive Officer. We're very pleased to connect with you tonight to discuss the upcoming Anderson Dam Tunnel project, which is scheduled to break ground this summer. Before we do that, however, we wanted to take steps to prepare you for what is going to occur around your neighborhoods, the Borrello Ranch Estates and the Alicante neighborhoods, to prep us to get ready for this construction work. Our team is here tonight to talk about the impacts to your neighborhood, to share more information about the tunnel project. At the end of the presentation, we will be happy to address any of your questions and concerns. Before we go any further, however, I wanted to introduce Albert Lee from Valley Water's Office of Communications. Albert will provide helpful information on how to access the tools for this virtual Zoom meeting and facilitate your questions following the project presentation. Albert?
Thank you, Melanie. So tonight you will have an opportunity to ask questions. I'm going to review the Zoom webinar functions briefly. Bear with me as I share my screen here. So tonight, if you're using the Zoom platform, you may or may not already have audio, but if you're having issues, feel free to call in using the number on the screen and the information that was sent out in our invitations. You will have an opportunity to ask questions. There's a Q&A button on your toolbar. Please enter your questions there. You will also have the opportunity to ask your questions verbally by raising your hand. If you raise your hand, I will call out your name, or actually one of our speakers will call out your name, and we will ask you to unmute yourself. If you're joining us via phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and press *6 to unmute yourself as well. We don't recommend doing the chat box for questions. It does get real fast and we'll lose track of it very fast as well. And for those also joining on Facebook, you can also enter your question as a comment. We'll relay that into our meeting as well. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to stop my screen share and hand the floor back to Melanie.
You're muted, Melanie.
I'm sorry, thank you. Thanks, Albert, appreciate that. And now I would like to introduce Director John Borrello, who represents this community as part of District 1 on the Valley Water Board of Directors. Director Borrello was appointed to the board in 2015 and then re-elected in 2018. He has also served this community of Morgan Hill as a member of the City Council and as its mayor from 1992 through 1996. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Borrello.
Thank you, Melanie. Hello, everyone. It is with extreme pleasure to be here as we mark this next significant milestone in our efforts to keep our community safe. One of the first things we had to do, as many of you are aware, was to lower the water levels at Anderson Reservoir as directed by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I am pleased to say that we have met the challenge, completing the task this past December. The reservoir is now approximately 3% capacity, which allows us to safely begin the tunnel project. This means there's going to be a lot of construction, a lot of activity as we build this new structure. And there will be impacts, which our team will go over with you tonight in just a few moments. But the end result, in terms of public safety, will be well worth the effort. When this tunnel project completed, when the tunnel project is completed, Valley Water will be able to keep you safe during times of heavy storms and other emergencies. That is our highest priority. Now, I understand there might be some members of the City Council or others from the City of Morgan Hill present at this meeting. If so, I want to say thank you for attending our meeting. We welcome you here. This evening, our team is going to get into some details about the tunnel project and talk about how our design engineers did an amazing job of keeping the environmental issues in mind and actually reducing the number of trees that unfortunately needed to be removed as part of this work. I do hope we can address many of your questions tonight, and please feel free to ask us anything about the project or about what we're going to be talking about this evening. We do plan to hold another meeting for the broader community on the tunnel project later this spring to discuss the beginning of the construction of the tunnel project. And we will keep you informed about that as more details become available. We're targeting early April, late April, early May in that time frame. So with that, I want to thank you for joining our meeting tonight. And I'd like to go back to Melanie Richardson.
Melanie, you're on mute again.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Director Borrello. I appreciate that. So I wanted to just start off by letting our viewers know how this presentation is going to go. We're going to start off with our Deputy Operating Officer, Chris Hakes, giving an overview and presentation on the Anderson Dam Tunnel Project and the associated tree removal. Then we will hold a question and answer session via Zoom and Facebook, where 3 of our key project staff members will be available to answer questions. In addition to Chris, we have Sarah Piramoon, who's our Associate Water Resources Specialist, leading the permitting efforts on this project. And we have Yogesh Prashar, an Associate Engineer, who's leading the design efforts on that project. Following that, Chris will turn the floor back to Director Borrello for closing remarks. So with that, I would like to invite Chris to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Melanie. Just one quick acknowledgement. We also have one of our other directors present. Director Linda Lazat is here, so I thank her very much for joining. I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation. First, a little bit about me. I am the Deputy Operating Officer for our Dam Safety and Capital Delivery Division. My name is Chris Hakes. So I am responsible for basically all 10 of our dams and reservoirs, making sure they're seismically sound. So the Anderson project does fall under that purview. So I'll go ahead and give you a status update, a little bit about where we've been, where we're going, and what you can expect in the near future. Let me share my screen real quick. And I do tend to talk fast, so I'm going to try to slow it down. And let's see if this works. Okay, so the Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit Project. All right, let me make sure. There we go. Okay, a little bit of background. Anderson Dam is the largest of our 10 reservoirs. It holds almost 90,000 acre feet. All 9 of our other reservoirs would fit inside of the footprint of Anderson Reservoir. Obviously, that makes it a very crucial cog in our water supply portfolio. In 2012, we launched the seismic stability analysis and created the Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit Project. And that was because after an independent evaluation, we found that the dam, which was constructed in 1950, wasn't up to modern standards. Nothing really wrong with the design itself. It's just that science has progressed in the last 70 years, and we're at a point at which this dam needs to be refreshed and updated. On February 20th, February 20th of 2020, quite the year, we had a little bit of a change in the way the project was structured. Originally, this was one large project, but on February 20th, 2020, after seeing what happened in 2017 with the dam level raising basically to its spillway and activating, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, who we refer to as FERC, who is the federal regulator in charge of dam safety, determined that that was a little bit too close for their comfort. They had watched Oroville have its spillway fail, and as a result, they weren't comfortable with the latent risk that was there. So on February 20th, they gave us an order, kind of changed what's happening in the project, and I'll go over that in a couple slides. Here's our existing dam. We've got a spillway right here on our upper left, an outlet pipe that runs right under our dam. This outlet pipe's the capacity is about 500 CFS, which is cubic feet per second. Compared to the 90,000 acre foot capacity of the reservoir itself, it's kind of like punching a little tiny straw into a 55-gallon garbage can. It's not a very good way to regulate the level of the reservoir. We have our dam crest, which is just the roadway on the top of the dam, and our dam embankment, which is all the soil that you have that is holding back the water. Specifically, our work, this is Cochrane Road right here. Whoops, yeah, that's Coyote Road. This is Cochrane that turns this way. Specifically, I believe this is where you guys are currently living in the Borrello Estates. What we're looking at is some tree removal generally in this area here. I'll have another slide a little bit later on, but I just wanted to kind of show you on the aerial view before it gets into a technical plan view. Here's our current project. we are going to completely remove and replace the embankment. That's because after some geotechnical analysis done in 2016, 2017, we determined that the original plan for the retrofit, which was just to place more material on the downstream face, was not going to work. There's actually an increased vulnerability for liquefaction in the embankment. That means during an earthquake, the soil on the dam embankment basically turns to either pudding or jello, whatever your favorite dessert might be, and has the ability to drop in the order of 20 or 30 feet. Obviously, that reduces the height of your dam. You can have water come over the top of it. It's not ideal. So we're going to take all of that liquefiable material, replace it with suitable material, and that's going to be quite the undertaking. We're going to completely replace our spillway. Initially, we were just going to patch it in place, kind of patch any cracks, make sure everything was in working order. But after 2017 and what happened at Oroville, the Department of Safety of Dams for the state of California completely revised the design criteria for all spillways across the state. As a result, we're going to replace it in its entirety for this project. We have a new low-level outlet pipe that we're installing. As you can see, it goes around the dam embankment rather than straight under. That will protect it from any movement or slumping of the dam itself. It's also much larger than the current outlet. In the interim, we're going to create a capacity of around 2,000 CFS in conjunction with the existing outlet that will increase the discharge capability about 5 times existing. In the end result, it'll be about 12 times capacity, so very significant. We'll have a temporary diversion system in place to drain the water from the reservoir, and then eventually we'll be installing a high-level outlet. This is another new criteria from the Department of Safety of Dams, DSOD, that requires that we're able to drain 30% of the reservoir in about 7 calendar days. So what happened on February 20th? So our restricted capacity that we have been operating under since 2009 was about 58% of the dam capacity. That equals an elevation of 592 feet. Well, when they gave us the order on February 20th, that was reduced to 35% of capacity, which is elevation 565. We were already in compliance because we were in our winter operation mode, so it was not a big deal. We were then also to take all necessary measures to drain down to elevation 488, which is the 3% capacity. That, as Director Borrello mentioned, has been accomplished as well. We started draining October 1st, complete about mid-December. We are down at 3% right now. We're supposed to develop a plan to maintain that, which we have in place. And then we have to expedite the design and construction of the new outlet tunnel, which is what we'll be telling you about tonight. The last thing they said on February 20th was that we needed to make sure that the full project kept moving forward, complete our permitting and design, and ultimately go to construction. What we're doing right now helps with the interim risk, but in order to make the dam fully seismically sound, we need to complete the overall project. So here's what you can expect to see. The little neon outline there is actually what 3% capacity means. That is still about 3,000 acre feet. Compared to the 90,000 acre feet, it's not very much, but it is as big as our Stevens Creek Reservoir. So there is still water in the reservoir at this time. It's just not a lot. This is some of the typical equipment you'll see during construction. Of course, graders, bulldozers, different types of drilling equipment. And this is what we're talking about tonight, which is the tree removal. This is flipped from the aerial photography that you saw. So this is actually the inside of the dam, and this is actually the outside. I believe Cochrane Road is right about here, comes that way. So what you're looking at is in the area where we will be putting the new diversion tunnel and outlet right here, low-level outlet. We're going to be taking out trees in that area. Along Cochrane Road itself, you'll still have a line of trees that will prevent, basically it'll provide screening from Cochrane. And then we have some intermittent trees that'll be removed along the roadway coming up to the dam and then along the parking lot area. That'll be to facilitate staging. This is what you can expect to see for tree clearing. Basically, we'll take it down to the stump. If for any reason we can't take the tree down to the stump, we might strip it. That is to prevent nesting birds. Basically, what we're looking to do is minimize the time that we're in construction. If we do get a bird or sensitive species that nests in a tree, usually there's a buffer zone that's erected around it. So we can't work within a certain distance of that tree. And ultimately, we need to wait for that bird to fully complete its nesting and leave before we can do the work. As that's the case, if we have a lot of nesting birds, we have the potential to extend the construction a year or more. So we're trying to get ahead of that. You also have some types of sensitive species, which lives in these like tules as well. So, but obviously with the Anderson Reservoir down at 3%, there are some public safety hazards. It's quite muddy. As a result, we have worked with Santa Clara County Parks to close off the park. The Toyon Picnic area in Serpentine Trail is closed. Woodchopper Slide is also closed. The boating and fishing are out of commission for a good deal of time, probably about 10 years, and fishing as well. We do have a map that comes up right after this. And this kind of shows you some of the impacted areas. The Rosedden area park is still open. And actually, if you go up there, you'll get a good view of the work that's going to start to commence. As I said, no water means no boating, and that will be in effect for 10 years or so. Depends on how quickly we can get done. But right now, for the next 4 years or so, it'll be down at 3%, and then it'll be bone dry. And that's relative. As we do get inflows, you may see some water, but it'll look more like this and have no water present. Some of the potential impacts you can expect in the coming weeks, maybe as early as next February 22nd, Monday. You might see some increased flows in Coyote Creek after storm events. So because the reservoir is down to 3%, part of the way we're going to keep it down there is to keep the outlet open. So as it starts to rain and water comes in, it'll go right down into Coyote Creek. There will also be construction equipment, so you'll hear noise, revving of engines, backup alarms, vegetation chipping and saws. And then work activities will be mainly Monday through Friday, occasional Saturday work, all of it in the daytime. We'll try to notify you if weekend work is occurring, but you know, you can expect the typical construction sounds. The thing that we're not experiencing right now, and it's not necessarily related to construction, but you may see in summer is kind of elevated algal levels, which will cause a rotten smell, hydrogen sulfide, or rotten egg odor. And that's just because as the algae blooms in that water pool, it kind of warms up and there's less oxygen, kind of gives off that rotten egg smell. And this is our project schedule. It's bifurcated in two because what we're talking about is the tunnel project. This is what's accelerated through the FERC order. As you can see, we're going to start construction in spring of 21. It'll be down, as I said, at 3% for 4 years or so. We plan to finish in 2024, or actually late 2023, and then start the overall construction. Right now, this shows a completion 2030, 2031. We're working with our regulators to pull that in and shrink that so that we have a less time during construction and less impact. But we'll update you as that becomes more realistic and more known. And I think that takes me to the question and answer session. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can actually see when questions come in. Okay, so let's see. Just a reminder, you can put questions in your Q&A. Try not to use the chat. And if you raise your hand, I'll try to call on you. And let's see, I do have one question in the Q&A, and it looks like it's from Laura. Will the fencing be up around the lower portion of the park off near Cochrane for multiple years? So I'm going to kick that over to Yogesh. Yogesh, can you answer that, please?
Yes, the fencing will be up. I'm sorry, I missed the first part. My audio went bad. Sorry about that.
Let me repeat the question for you. Will the fencing be up around the lower portion of the park off on near Cochrane for multiple years?
Yeah, the fencing will be up. The park will be closed, right? For
so that's
possibly the 10
correct?
after 10 years, correct?
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm looking over here. I think something did pop into the chat. Question from Kumar. Once the dam is done, will the city of Morgan Hill have more water saved up? Yes, actually it will. That's because right now, since I think 2009, we've been at restricted capacity, 58%. We're about 50,000 acre feet. So we had about 40,000 acre feet of additional capacity. Right now, we're actually down at 3%. So we basically will be recouping 97% of the capacity. But as opposed to where we were prior to 2020, we'll have 40,000 additional acre feet of water that we'll be able to use that we haven't been able to access in a decade or so. Another question from Joseph. What are you doing with the fish? A statement before said you were going to relocate the fish. So the downstream creek for Coyote Creek is actually sensitive habitat. Well, it's endangered species habitat for the steelhead that are in the area. So last August, when the fires were raging and COVID was in full effect, our crews went out and actually did a fish rescue. They took, I believe, around 76 fish that were located, steelhead that were located in Coyote Creek, and relocated those up to Upper Penitencia Creek, which is the same watershed, but a more suitable environment. As we progress through the project, if additional fish rescue is necessary down in Coyote Creek, we will do that. Interior to the reservoir, there are actually no protected species. So those fish will continue to stay in the reservoir. It will actually provide a good food source for additional endangered or sensitive species like bald and golden eagle. And we expect the natural order to kind of play itself out there. Okay. Question from Laura. What does it need to be closed? Oh, why does it need to be closed for that long? So that's a long, involved story. Basically, when we initially envisioned the project, it was only going to be 3 years. Part of what extended the duration was the sheer magnitude of the work that needs to be done. Most seismic retrofits are just buttressing of the downstream face, which means adding additional soil to the downstream face. Because we're completely removing the embankment, it has to be done in a staged way in order to keep the dam at a minimum level to protect the downstream community. That lengthened the work out substantially between 5 to 7 years. On top of that, because we are going to be out of commission for that long, there are various impacts to the wildlife species, sensitive species, and our water supply. In order to minimize those impacts, it got even longer. We have to keep the creek at least partially wet. We'll be doing that with imported water. So basically, added to the environmental and then dam safety components, those are all very difficult in themselves from a logistic point of view. On top of that, we have 13 different regulating agencies at the federal, state, and local level. I don't know if you've ever tried to get 13 different people to agree on one thing, but it can be quite challenging. So the process to get to this has been a long time coming, and we do realize that people are a little bit frustrated with the duration, but it is necessary, and we are trying to squeeze that down as much as possible. But unfortunately, that's 10 years is going to be what it takes. Okay. Laura, also, will Cochrane Road be widened around the tight turnaround around the base of the dam? I'm going to kick that one to Yogesh again.
No, at this time, we don't have any plans to make any road widening at Cochrane Road for ADTP, for ADSRP. There may need to be some modifications done for a short period of time, and there may be some closures needed at Cochrane Road for large construction access, but no.
Okay. As a related question to the duration in the chat, there was a from Antonio, why does the park along Cochrane need to be closed for 10 years? That's mainly because there will be construction equipment and staging in that area. It won't be safe for use by the public. You could basically get hurt. And it's just, the recreation is not going to be available in the park. And since that construction equipment's down there, we want to keep the public protected. Let's see, Nikila, is there a risk of flooding while the embankment is being constructed again? So we've actually worked with the Department of Safety of Dams and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to keep a minimum level of protection for the interim dam. So our minimum level of protection is at 1 in 2,000 probability of overtopping, which is about 0.05%. So that means that, you know, once every 2,000 years, you would see something that would possibly overtop the flows. Now, in comparison to when the dam is fully rebuilt, that's a 1 in 10,000. So there is an increase in the probability of flooding from overtopping of the dam, but we've agreed on a safe level that's it basically blends safety of the public and trying to get the project completed. Okay, Joseph, all the bass fish in lake. So I believe that Joseph may be concerned about the fish that are in the lake, the bass. Bass are actually non-native and considered predatory. They're considered somewhat of a nuisance fish. There are bass in the lake right now. We expect that as construction is ongoing, as I said, some of the more opportunistic predators in the area will take care of that for us. Jeff Sheets, who is the contractor that has been selected to do the dam work? Is the contract incentive-based to reward the contractor for earlier completion? We are actually still in the middle of our bidding process. We have pre-qualified 6 contractors. So what that basically means is normally we are bound by low bid. As a government entity, we basically are compelled to take the lowest bid from the lowest qualified responsive bidder. when you're rebuilding a dam like this, which has the ability to create impact on 1.5 million residents, we didn't think low bid was the best way to go. So we went to a best value award. So what that means is we take into account past performance, portfolio, skills, and we blend that with the price they submit. That's ongoing, so no contractor has been awarded yet. And the way that the specs are structured, there are cost incentives and disincentives for early and late completion. Okay. Question from John. 10 years to completion is extremely hard to understand. What is the main reason for such a long schedule? What are the chances for pulling in? So I think I've already spoken to why we got to such a long duration. It was a myriad of factors. The scope of the project is expanded. It's taken a long time to get the permits. There are very specific restrictions in place to minimize environmental impact as well as public safety. What are the chances for pulling in? It's really going to depend on our contractor. Since we have pre-qualified contractors, they know what they're doing. We're hoping that once they get in there, they'll find the better way to do things. Basically ours are all theoretical. These guys are out there, they do this every day. They can find a better way to do it. We're going to work with them. We're going to see if we can get it done quicker. Let's see, Nikila, our house will be close to the pumping station. How will the level of noise be around the pumping station? So I'm going to kick that off to Yogesh, and Yogesh, if you need help, you might want to ask Sarah on that one.
Yeah, sure. I don't think you'd have a lot of noise down by the pumping station. Most of the tunneling work, especially in the first 3 years, is going to consist of excavation of the portal, and the noise should be isolated to most of the work by the dam area. And tunneling by itself is within a 24-foot diameter tunnel, and it's going to be inside basically a big hole in the ground. So you shouldn't, the noise levels won't be significant by the pump station and by your house. So, and most of the construction staging we're doing is on our dam property, so the noise levels shouldn't be that high.
Okay, I've got 2 questions.
Sarah, feel free to add if I missed anything.
I think you did a great job.
Okay, I've got 2 questions considering Cochrane Road, one from the Patrick family and one from R. Kumar. Question is, will there be any impacts to residents' road closures on Cochrane during the duration of the project? If so, how long? Yogesh?
So we don't plan to close Cochrane Road. We're going to be using it without closing it for the ADTP project, which is till the end of 2023. As we mentioned earlier, for the ADSRP, there may be some time where we'll have temporary road closures, but those will be after 2024 and beyond, and that the road closure plan will be provided by the contractor at that time. So you'll have plenty of notification on the times, the 3 times we plan to close the road, but we don't have that right now.
Thank you, Yogesh. Question from Antonio, and then I think a related question from Mr. Kumar. Why does the park along Cochrane need to be closed for 10 years? And what about the ability to walk in the area for exercise when the work is going on? There will be fencing erected to keep the public safe. So as long as you're on the exterior of the fence, you are free to walk around the area. As I said, the Rosedale area kind of up above the dam will be available. So if you were interested in getting some exercise, enjoying the views and looking at the construction, you could always go out there. The park along Cochrane needs to be closed for 10 years because it will be a staging area for some of the construction equipment. As well, the trails that connect to it will be impacted. So even if the park was available, you wouldn't be able to access the trail to get up to the dam anyway. So those are all done for public safety. So that's the best explanation I can give. I know the duration is frustrating for some individuals, but it is what we are looking for in order to get a safer product at the end. Okay, let's see. I had a comment to explain some of the acronyms that we're currently using. So I think I've told you that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is what we call FERC. DSOD is the Department of Safety of Dams. Yogesh, did you have any acronyms that you were using that you could explain to the viewing public?
I don't recall using any acronyms. I hope I didn't. ADTP means Anderson Dam Tunnel Project.
ADSRP is the Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit Project, which will come after the tunnel is complete. If anyone else has any, you can go ahead and throw them in either the Q&A or the chat, and I'll do our best to answer it. And thankfully, someone has raised their hand, so you guys are tired of my voice. I'm going to kick it over to Laura. Laura, if you could please unmute yourself so you can ask your question. I think Laura's still muted.
She may have lowered her hand. I think she might have asked her question in the Q&A.
Okay. Well, I do have another hand raised, Samantha. If Samantha would unmute herself, we can see if she has a question.
Samantha's been unmuted, but I don't see a, I don't see a mic device enabled. She might not have a microphone active.
Well, I'm sorry, guys. I was hoping you'd have a reprieve from me kind of talking all the time, but looks like we're out of luck. So we'll go ahead and go back to the Q&A. Jeff has a question. What are the plans to build out the creek below the dam to accommodate the water flow from a bigger outlet valve? Yogesh or Sarah, who would like to take that one?
Yeah, well, I can go and Sarah will finish. Yes, there are plans. The modification of the northern channel is planned as a part of ADTP to accommodate larger flows that are anticipated for the ADTP project, which will be in about 2,500 CFS. Right now, as Chris mentioned, we have 500 CFS. So, and we'll have the existing southern channel will take about 500 and the northern will take about 2,000 CFS, totaling 2,500 CFS. And Sarah, you can chime in on the environmental aspects of it.
Sure. And Chris, do you mind resharing the slide that shows the map of the vegetation removal in high priority areas? I think that provides a good picture that I'd like to use.
All right, as I go through. There we go.
Yeah, that one. So you can see the creek goes right along Cochrane Road, and the creek there is actually, it gets pretty full when we release 500 CFS. So this is where our design team really gets a lot of credit for getting creative. We knew that in order to pass the amount of water that we needed to pass, we would have to do substantial modifications to this creek. As Chris mentioned, this creek is steelhead critical habitat, and we would have to have widened and or hardened 1,200 linear feet of creek. So that the entire stretch of creek that goes through Toyon and Live Oak Park would have to be modified. That was the resource agencies, the fisheries agencies. They really did not like that piece of our project. So we went back to the drawing board, and what you can see here, it's called the North Channel. That is this high capacity channel that sends the water an alternate route and then rejoins Coyote Creek just a little bit further downstream where there's more capacity to carry those flows. And that allows us to leave the Coyote Creek that you see from your home across the street intact as it is now. So we're building this, it's kind of like a high capacity channel. And this is actually where the creek was before we built the dam. So we're using what was there before to reconstruct this alternative path for water.
Okay, go ahead and stop that screen share so I can see the questions again. To our boys, Hoover Dam took 5 years. Would it be faster to just build a new dam rather than retrofit? Oh, you know, when Anderson Dam was originally constructed, it took a year to build. Basically, what we've got different from then, from the construction of Hoover Dam, is we have a greater understanding of the impact of construction on the environment, right? We have to do things in a specific way. Standards are much more, the safety standards are much more advanced than they used to be, the way things need to be constructed. Hoover Dam was built in Nevada, we're in California, our regulations are a little bit tighter. So there are different things we have to comply with. You know, frankly, I would love to build this in 5 years. I'd love to build it in 1 year. but just the logistics of what we're doing, taking down a dam while it's still in service, in place, and then constructing it basically from scratch, it's going to take a while. Okay.
Maybe Chris,
Yeah.
Chris, just following up on that, I believe your team also did look at possibly building a dam upstream or other things like that, but the geotechnical issues of that were also, unfortunately, there are geotechnical issues, I guess, throughout the area. And so this location, rebuilding the dam was basically the only option. Building a newer dam upstream or at a different location didn't pan out, right?
That is correct. We did look at alternate locations. Basically, the duration would have been just as long. The impacts would have been greater to the environment. So this is the best solution that we found for being able to keep this water source. Okay, does Cochrane Road near the dam, particularly entering Borrello Ranch, be closed? It will not be. We're going to keep it open. Basically, there may be temporary closures, but we'll give you notification in advance. We expect that we're going to try to provide as much access as possible the entire time. Well, Aaron, I don't know if this is a question from Aaron Baker, and he's just giving me a freebie, but we'll see what this question is. Will there be a dedicated Valley Water point of contact to address questions, concerns once construction begins? Who should we contact should problems emerge? Yes, we do have a dedicated contact. His name is Tony Mercado. He's actually on this. His phone number should have been plastered to all the different flyers you've seen. In addition, when construction starts, we'll introduce you to the contractor that'll be out there. We'll have Valley Water staff that'll be there to interface with the public. If there's any questions, you can still contact Tony. He's stuck with the project for the duration, and I have been told on good authority he cannot retire until the dam is back in service. So he's going to be your point of contact to the bitter end. Okay.
Chris, the point of contact is also Director Borrello.
There you go. Our director is also volunteering as a point of contact. Okay. The question from Dave. Will the creek continue to flow for the entire 10 years of construction using the pump station pipe outlet near the base of the dam on Cochrane? I'm gonna give that one to Sarah because she can explain how the water is gonna flow.
Yeah, so we are pretty lucky that in this particular situation, we have a source of imported water just below the dam. And what that allows us to do is to use our imported water to continue to recharge the groundwater basin by releasing water that is not local, it's from outside of our county. But it keeps the creek wet, it keeps the fish in good condition. And so even if we don't have water in Anderson, we'll be able to maintain a wetted stream.
Thank you, Sarah.
And maybe along those lines, Sarah, I think we also we'll have a little bit of water in Coyote Reservoir just upstream. So that'll help us out if there are some issues with the imported water, and to try to keep it's of course, Coyote Reservoir is a very small reservoir, but also is another source, smaller, albeit smaller source that we'll be using to keep the creek wet.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. Question from Mike Powell. How deep will the lake be at 3% capacity? Do you forecast large temperature changes of the water? I'm actually, I think Aaron's feeling left out. He's answered a couple of questions. I'm gonna throw that to him.
Yes, so unfortunately at 3%, how deep it will be shallow in a lot of places. And I guess Chris might be able to correct me, but I'm thinking it's not very deep even over by it's very shallow as it fans out. Over by the outlet, it's got to be less than 50 feet because I know that the first outlet is, I think, more almost like 20. So unfortunately, it's not deep. And yes, we can expect temperature changes. I believe that Chris did mention a little bit earlier that shallow waters, we will keep our eye on it and make sure we understand what's going on, but they will be susceptible to temperature changes, and they could be susceptible to algae blooms. It's one of the other reasons why we would like to keep the public and pets away from the reservoir during warmer times of the season. So you need to stay away for your safety. But yes, it will be shallower, and we do expect some temperature changes during the summer.
Aaron, did wonderfully when I threw him on the spot there. That bus missed him, obviously. So basically, at its deepest part, yes, Aaron's completely correct. It's only between 20 and 30 feet deep. So it does get relatively shallow. Let's see, Laura, how will this affect home values? I am not a realtor, and we do not have, I believe, real estate on our calls right now. What we would say is you reach out.
Yes, we do. Or David, sorry, Dave, are you with real estate?
Let me get through my disclaimer before I kick it to David. So we don't have the real estate staff on right now. What we would suggest is that you talk to your local realtor to see how your property values may or may not be affected. We do have our risk manager, David Cahan, on, and I will kick it to David if he would like to say anything else about that.
Actually, no, I think you covered it, Chris. We don't have any information on real estate values. We would expect that you need to talk to your real estate agent about this.
Okay. John, what is the new planned capacity of the Lake of Anderson Lake after it's completed? So basically, that will be the 89,000 acre feet. We haven't seen that capacity for over a decade now, and that'll basically be what it is. It'll be restored to that. Even though we are raising the dam slightly, about 7 feet, that's just for extra freeboard in order to comply with the new safety regulations. For Laura, she can appreciate the duration of the construction. She just doesn't feel that there's any reason to keep the park closed at times when there's no construction going on, such as now. It doesn't take the needs of the community in mind, and we're at a time when we're under a shelter in place. Also, she is saddened to hear that fixing the width of Cochrane Road in that location isn't going to happen. With Morgan Hill, that portion of the road is dangerous for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. So I do understand the frustration. The park has been closed. We were doing intermittent activities on and off. We had drilling activities, we had the fish rescue, and right now, maybe starting as early as the 22nd, we'll have tree removal in that area by the park. So that we're just trying to keep the public safe. I understand that that is a nice resource to have, especially during the pandemic when people want to get out. And we are working with the city of Morgan Hill, possibly to put additional features in place after the project is completed, so that it will be maybe some sidewalks on Cochrane or something else. Unfortunately, there just wasn't the ability of the city to engage with the widening of Cochrane at this point. I think that's actually a county facility as well. So the coordination between Valley Water, the city of Morgan Hill, and the county, everybody trying to have the resources to get that done and widened, and the logistics of all the utilities that are in that area made it infeasible during this construction project. Okay, the Patrick family. Post-construction, what is the plan to refill the reservoir? Mainly natural occurring rainfall or some other method? I'm gonna throw that to Aaron again.
All right, yeah, thank you. As most of you may have known, as you live by the Coyote pumping plant, the Anderson Reservoir is actually connected to our raw water distribution system. And from that, we can take water from the San Luis Reservoir and put it into Anderson Reservoir. We can also take water from Anderson Reservoir and send it to actually to Calero Reservoir and to our treatment plants throughout, even a treatment plant all the way up in the almost close to Fremont area. So we have the ability to move a lot of water around there. When the dam is fixed, we're definitely wanting to be able to use that storage again, to have that emergency local supply, to really have something we can rely on, and a cold water pool to keep the fish happy below. What it kind of depends on is the hydrology. For those that have lived there for a while, you know that between certain years we can go from a very large amount of rain to the, and I don't want to use the drought word, but I will, to very slow amounts of rain. So depending on what the hydrology is, as it moves in, we will capture the right amount of water, as allowed by our water rights. The other part would be is depending on our imported water allocations or the price of other water that's available, we will be able to have a space to store some of that water. So we will be looking at and taking advantage of lucrative investments in imported water and putting it in. To put on an average, and this is average, I don't think anything on this watershed is average. As I said, we've got some years where there's no water and other years where we could fill the reservoir in a month. It would take about 4 years if you'd use the natural rainfall to fill the reservoir. That being said, like I said, there's a myriad of other opportunities that may be available for us to fill it faster, or if it's in the middle of a drought, it could be a little slower.
Thank you, Aaron. Always a very detailed answer. See, that's why I threw it to you. If it was me, I'd just say, if it rains a lot, it'll fill up. If not, we'll put extra water in. Okay, I got 2 questions that are kind of related to cost from the Patrick family and Jeff Sheets. What is the current project budget and how is it being funded? And has all the funding been set aside for the project, and what is the estimated cost? So the current cost of the project is, I believe, in the neighborhood of $654 million. That has escalated over the years. Obviously, this project was started in 2012. The project is fully funded. We've known about its existence for a long time, so we've been preparing for construction. So we have been setting aside funds in our current water rates. That is how the majority of the project will be paid, is through water rates. We do have some money set aside within our Safe Clean Water bond measures, both the one that is in effect now and the one that just passed overwhelmingly by the voters. I believe there's about $55 million in the Safe Clean Water Program to help pay for this. In addition, because we're always looking for opportunities to partner with federal and state government agencies, we constantly look for different grants that are available through FEMA, through other agencies, as well as low-cost loans. The federal government offers what we call the WIFIA loan. WIFIA stands for something that I can't remember, so unfortunately, I'm just going to throw that acronym at you. But basically, what it is it's a low-cost loan from the federal government to us that has an interest rate that's lower than your mortgage. These days, that's pretty low. So those are the different things we're looking to offset some of those costs and make sure that it's nice and in the rate structure you don't get hit really hard in any particular year because of the project. Okay, let's see. I've got a question for you, Yogesh from Rich. Will there be blasting involved? And if so, what can we expect in terms of noise, time of day, etc.?
So the amount of blasting that'll be involved it's dependent on the type of formational materials that we encounter during the tunneling operations. At this time, the geotechnical baseline report, we don't anticipate more than, we're baselined it at 15% of the entire run, which is about 1,000 out of the sort of 1,200 or so feet. So maybe 200-300 feet will be blasting that we anticipate. That may change though. So the blasting that will occur will be further into the tunnel. So it will be at least 500 or so feet into the tunnel and won't be until the following year of 2022. And blasting is such that when you're that far into the tunnel, I don't anticipate you will hear it, although there are strict noise guidelines for blasting and so on with sound shields, etc. So there will be some, but it'll be, we'll try to mitigate against noise from blasting.
I think Yogesh may have buried the lead. No night blasting. So we're gonna try to do it during daytime hours, and it shouldn't sound like the 4th of July. So I think those are the keys that we want to get across to you today. Okay, next question from Joseph. Is it true that you guys will keep Coyote closed this year so no water flows into Anderson? I might need a little assistance with this, but I'm going to say the answer is actually incorrect. That is not true because we are going to use Coyote like we normally would. So we will have bypass flows that do go down to help keep the creek wet. I see that Aaron is nodding, but I will kick it to him just in case there's anything else he thinks should be added.
But Coyote is not connected to any imported water sources, so the current level of Coyote just happens to be a result of the drier conditions that we're seeing at this time. But Chris, you're absolutely right. We're going to be using Coyote Reservoir to store some water, so we have a little bit of water to bypass through Anderson.
Okay, don't go too far, Aaron. Harvey asked, how will this project affect groundwater levels in regards to wells?
So as we've talked about earlier, we're fortunate that we have imported water. We'll be using two things. One is Coyote Reservoir. So as much water as we can safely and reasonably collect in Coyote Reservoir, we'll be using that, for both bypassing it through Anderson. So we'll be able to do groundwater recharge and keep the creek wet for the environment. Not only that, but we'll have the imported water, which will be coming in at the base. And we have very large pipelines, and we've been analyzing those pipelines and the pump stations, making sure they're robust to keep the creek wet, which will also keep the recharge going. And along that, there are also some, what we're calling some avoidance and minimization measures that we're looking at. For those that go down a little bit further, we have the Coyote Percolation Pond and other areas. The Coyote Percolation Pond is a great in-stream recharge facility that we have that we will be able to keep wet with imported water during this time frame. We're also looking at possibly retrofitting that facility with a better operating inflatable structure, and even looking at chillers or other things so that we can make sure that we can continue the recharge and keep the environment wet or keep the creek wet using the imported water that we have available at this time.
Thank you, Aaron. Poor Aaron. He wasn't even supposed to answer any questions, but look, he's doing wonderfully. Okay, Dave, will motorized watercraft continue to be allowed on the lake after completion? Short answer, yes, absolutely. Let's see, Laura, will there be a sidewall around that tight turn on Cochrane then? Yogesh, I'm going to kick that to you.
So the traffic plan will be up to the contractor. So once you select a contractor, he may elect to put something in, but at this time, the design team doesn't think there will be one, but the contractor may decide to put one, and then he'll have to pull the permit and put whatever safety walls he needs. We don't anticipate at this time.
Okay, thank you. Joseph, Us fishermen and other boaters seem to be left in limbo. Seems like our water company doesn't seem to care that we have to travel out of our county to fish. We spend thousands of dollars a year in this county, and no one seems to care about our needs as taxpayers and water customers. Well, I would like to say that we do have other spots in the county that allow boating and fishing. I think two of our other reservoirs that's allowed is Coyote and Calero. The issue is right now, because of the restrictions, there's a very fine line when we can actually have the water levels at a place where it's safe to boat. We do partner with county parks to ensure that and make that program happen. Obviously, Anderson is our largest recreational body for boating, and we're trying to get that back in effect. Valley Water is a multi-mission organization. We are concerned with water supply. We are also concerned with the environment. We do want to promote different recreational benefits in conjunction with the county. So I know it may not seem like it, but we do hear what you're saying. We are trying to minimize impacts, and we do feel your pain as well.
Chris, I have a comment to that as well.
Sure, Director Vella.
So thank you. So to that question about recreation, we all want recreation. It's important. We need to have it. But the most important thing that we're talking about tonight is public safety. And that's the number one issue that is on the table tonight that we're talking about. Now, recreation is ultimately important, and we are aware of that. But when it comes to flooding issues and other issues that we're talking about in reference to public safety, that is the topic of tonight. So bear that in mind, and that is Valley Water's number one concern is the public safety concerns on flooding issues. So be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Borrello. Always putting a fine point to why we're really doing this project. Let's see if this works. I'm rolling the dice. I've got a hand up from Kyle. I hope Kyle has a mic and can be unmuted.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Kyle.
Awesome. Thanks you guys for putting this presentation together. You mentioned earlier about the contractor bidding process and providing some incentives for the contractors. Can you elaborate a little bit on some of those incentives and what timeline opportunities are present within those incentives?
Sure. So generally, we call them, they're incentive clauses. Or sometimes they're called bonus clauses or liquidated damages. So basically, there are milestones within the contract. And if a contractor would miss a milestone, they are charged a certain amount of money per day based on the impact to the district, Valley Water. There's also the potential to put in bonuses into the contract so that if they finish within a certain time frame sooner than we anticipate, they can make bonuses. So we find that, while we think we know what the best way to do the project is and we have a schedule that's laid out, oftentimes a contractor can get very, basically they can innovate, they're very ingenious in their ways they work, and they can pick up time. We want to provide them with an incentive to do that. So usually it's monetary, because that is what the bottom line for a contractor is. They're out to make money, right? So hopefully that answers your question, Kyle. We did have a question that was on Facebook. Anthony Lee, what happened to the fish and the wildlife that depended on the waterway? Is there documentation on the conservation efforts of wildlife? Before I kick it to Sarah, I would like to say that all of these different presentations that we do are available on our Anderson webpage and website. And in at least 2 or 3 of these presentations that I've given, I know I've shown our fish rescue video. So there is actual video documentation of us rescuing fish. However, I'm going to kick it over to Sarah for a more complete answer.
Yeah, so we initially provided this project overview to the board that in June, and that does have some documents that you can read regarding our avoidance and minimization measures for fish and wildlife. But I would also say that this component of the project, it's a little complicated, but the tunnel that we're starting right now, we're treating this as an emergency because of the FERC order. And so normally you would get an opportunity to review our EIR before we start construction. And you would get to see all the analysis that went into that. With the tunnel being fast-tracked and treated as an emergency because of that FERC order, you didn't get the opportunity to review the EIR. And EIR means Environmental Impact Report. It is it's part of our compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. And if this project is considered an emergency, and so it's an exempt from that act. However, the larger project, the Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit Project, is coming in right after this tunnel project, and we are putting together the EIR. We're hoping for you to be able to review that this fall, and it would have the whole story. So even though we're treating this as an emergency and you don't get to review it now, but it's going to have the whole story of the tunnel impacts, and as well as the larger seismic retrofit project, all the mitigation measures that we're putting in place to prevent impacts to the environment. We're working on it now, but you'll be able to read the big picture this fall in our draft environmental impact report.
Thank you, Sarah. I did get a clarification from Anthony Lee via Facebook. We only have one lake open because Coyote doesn't open in the winter. Thank you for the clarification, Anthony. Let's see, I have one more question from the Patrick family. If safety is the #1 priority, why did it take so long to start this project? Well, it's a long, involved answer. Basically, if we were able to design and construct the original project, we would have been done somewhere around 2018, right? About 3 years ago. Unfortunately, if we did that, the dam would still be seismically deficient because we would have just added material to the downstream face. Those explorations that we did in the early stages of the project were necessary to really hone in on the correct design to fix the problem. And then on top of that, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Regulations. There are so many different regulations in place, and there is a bunch of permit conditions that must be met. We must talk to a bunch of different agencies. We've been working our absolute hardest to get this done. As you heard from Sarah, we're actually under emergency declaration right now in order to start the project. So I think Director Borrello might want to speak to this as well.
I do. Thank you for that question. So one of the discoveries that was made recently, and subsequent to the timeline that Chris was talking about, when the dam was scheduled to commence its operation as far as retrofitting in 2012, was the discovery of fault lines within the vicinity and in the dam itself, which brought in the Federal Regulatory Commission to issue their mandate to repair the tunnel. So the issue is, we were ready to go. We had the funding in place, but the regulatory groups that from the federal government, the state government, they're the ones that have delayed this project, not Valley Water. We were prepared, we were ready, and the funding was in place. So remember what Chris said. There are 13 permitting agencies that didn't exist in the 1950s when this dam was built. That's what we are working with, and it takes time, folks. Believe me, if we can expedite this project, we would do so. So I just wanted to give you a little clarification as to why this project is taking so long.
Thank you, Director Borrello. I got one more clarification that was just given to me with you. WIFIA is the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act. It's actually offered through the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and they're actually setting up WIFIA this year for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as well. We will see if either of those parties is interested in loaning us money, but we think we have a decent shot at getting that for this project. Okay, another question from Facebook, Anthony Hall. What are we doing with all the fish that are currently in the lake? Once the lake is completely drained, will you just let the remaining fish suffer/die and go to waste? I'm going to kick that one to Sarah.
So we do have about 3 years of the reservoir being at 3% capacity, and at this time we think that they can persist in that 3% lake, but probably not very well. We do think that they are going to be crowded and die over time. I don't know how many will actually survive to make it to the actual draining of the project in the larger retrofit project. And logistically, it is been a challenge. We've been looking into options of what to do with them, but it's, again, back to that theme of regulation. We have some regulators saying, get rid of them, and some of them saying, keep them. And we haven't been able to find a path forward that suits all the interests and all the regulators, other than just keeping them in the reservoir for the time being.
And I think as we pointed out earlier, those fish will not go to waste per se. They will provide a food source for some of the other animals in the area, some of the other sensitive species, bald eagles. So they won't be wasted. They'll be part of the natural life cycle of circle of life. to quote the Lion King. Okay, I've got another hand raised from Nikila. Let's see if we can get Nikila online here.
Yes, hi. Thanks, Chris. Great presentation. So my question is around water safety. So with all the blasting and the tunneling and retrofitting, do you think the water in the area would still be safe for consumption? Would there be any treatments? Just in general, what's the water safety?
So I'll take first shot at this. The water will absolutely be safe. Basically, the water that is in the reservoir is what we call raw or untreated water. It's actually sent to our treatment plants for treatment before it goes to our water retailer, or your water retailer, whoever that may be, will then put what we call secondary treatment to make sure it is up to safety standards. So the water that is getting to your tap should absolutely be safe to drink. Our blasting shouldn't affect that in any way, shape, or form. We have several different safeguards in place, both as a wholesaler and retailer, to make sure that your water is safe. Aaron, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and to tag along, the contractor is required to do monitoring, and I believe Sarah could talk a little bit more. We'll actually have, if there's any muck or other things from this blasting or other tailings or other things that are going to happen, they're required to clean those up before they're discharged in other areas. You may be referring to that Coyote Creek is a great way of not only does it provide an environment for the fish and wildlife, it also is the recharge source. The other great thing about that, having the surface water spreading or the in-stream recharge, is that the soil acts as a natural filter for many of the things that that would be there. So not only are we keeping a close eye on everything that's happening, and we don't, the blasting, we don't expect anything there. The contractor will be required. We'll be doing testing. We'll be doing treating, and then not only that, but into the natural soils or other things that are on top of the aquifer will also filter out anything else that may come out of the tunnel construction. Sarah, anything to add?
Nothing from me.
I would reiterate that there's testing all along the way. So there's testing on our construction site as well as testing in our treatment plant. So we're testing the water, and it's definitely tested thoroughly before it gets to your tap. So
Thank you, guys. Jeff has a question. What is the Water District doing to protect homeowners who live on the shoreline and the potential for land movement when the lake is empty? So I'll talk about a little bit about what we did up front. When we were actually lowering the reservoir, we worked out an agreement with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to drain it at a very specific rate. That was so that any potential landslides wouldn't be activated. So there was a specific flow rate that we were capped at. And that was to make sure that we didn't do any damage to any homes that were there that might have some landslide potential. We also did pre-construction surveys, installed markers and different devices to make sure that we could monitor the movement throughout the entire project. And this summer, we are looking to do some remediation efforts just to stabilize those slopes. So in the future, we can draw it down at any rate we want to. So basically a faster rate if necessary. I'm also going to kick it to Yogesh because he's in charge of the technical details in case there's anything he'd like to add.
Chris, I think you gave a pretty good summary, and for the two landslides that we've been monitoring since even before we started to lower the reservoir, we have not seen any significant movement that we would be concerned about that are further toward the upper portion of the slopes that get closer to the homes. So that's good. And we'll continue to monitor it. And now that it's drained and there's no movement, that's a good sign. The other thing we look for is when it rains. Immediately after it rains, we again monitor it. We have in place instrumentation that we can monitor remotely that sends us a signal, and we can just get it live updates on the PC, that kind of stuff. So we have our experts who are monitoring those, and if we see anything that we haven't seen, if we do see anything of concern, we'll go out there and take any necessary corrective action. And as Chris mentioned, we do have landslide mitigation measures designed already in place that we'll implement this summer to arrest the landslides. Thank
you very much, Yogesh. That looks like it is the end of the questions that we have in the chat and Q&A. I'm going to ask some of the Water District staff to tell me if we have anything else on Facebook.
Just a few comments, Chris. Just some folks just thanking the director for his comments. And that's pretty much it I'm seeing on my end.
Okay, before I turn it back over to the director, I would just like to say we do have all of this information available on our website. I've said it before. We are available for questions. We're always there via email. Everyone's teleworking these days, so it's a little bit, you can call our office, you can leave us a message. We'll try to get back to you. Email is probably best. All of the information is on the website. I keep saying it, but we will be going out with several virtual meetings. We used to, when we were in person, go out to Morgan Hill 3 times a year, fall, spring, and one for during their city council meeting. We've been doing that virtually these days. And I want to say that ever since these virtual meetings started, we've been doing more virtual meetings than we did in-person meetings. So we're definitely trying to go out to the public and keep everyone informed. I feel like we average about 1 a month. So, you know, there is a ton of information available, and you can always reach out. We're happy to answer any questions you have. You've heard Director Borrello say that he's available as a point of contact. We've devoted Tony as a point of contact. You can reach out to Yogesh, Sarah, myself, Aaron. We're here to basically help you answer the questions and become familiar with the project, put your mind at ease. So I do have one more question. Shane, will access to Rosedden Park be available by bicycle before the project is complete? So unfortunately, I am unfamiliar with how County Parks has access to Rosedden and whether it's bicycle friendly or not in its current configuration. We'll have to follow up with you in the future. We'll basically have this question as part of probably our FAQ on our website, or refer you to an answer from County Parks. Shane, if you want to send maybe your email address, we'll go ahead and email you a question back.
I might be able to answer that one, Chris. It's my understanding that the Rosendin area is pretty sensitive because of rare plants and listed amphibians, special status amphibians up there. So I believe it's a walking only area because of those sensitive habitats.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, that does look like it concludes all of our questions. I'm going to throw it back to Director Borrello so he can give us some closing comments.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, staff, for providing answers to the questions that were being asked tonight. I just want to make a comment. See, I've lived in Morgan Hill for 44 years. My family and I have been here. And so I understand the issues that all of you are new to community of Morgan Hill are faced with. And I understand, believe me, we understand. It's daunting, the task at hand, and what work that the Valley Water District is going to be engaging in. And with you, the citizens of Morgan Hill, that are going to be impacted by this. And ultimately, the result will be the benefit to all the residents of Morgan Hill and Santa Clara County. So to remind you, this meeting tonight was recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel in the coming days, should you wish to go back and review anything you may have missed. If you have any further questions about the project in the coming days, please contact our neighborhood liaison, Tony Mercado, or me, or visit the district webpage and use the Access Valley Water system. And another reminder that we are planning to hold another public meeting in either late April or early May. Valley Water will notify you through our multiple channels that we do. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for attending tonight. Be safe. Good night.